Hello, patriots, patrons, friends, followers, and foes. I want to express my gratitude to those of you who have offered prayers over me, those who support me mentally, those who can support monetarily, and all who get involved with my raffles. You probably were not aware, but some of my raffles are how I'm able to pay some bills on the more difficult months. But I also host raffles for others who are in need of dollars. So for that reason, your involvement not only wins you pure silver and gold, but you are helping others in the process of something you already enjoy. So glory to God in that. I am forever grateful for the community I found here by merely starting this channel. So without further ado, let's get into Saturn rising and the third temple assembling. You may have heard about Saturn here and there on some other truther channels, but not ever really understood its significance to Illuminati, Satanists, Cabal, Freemasons, Luciferians, and all the rest. This was the case for me. And so I knew at some point I wanted to circle back to Saturn when I would hear about it, but not get much information in the way of why Saturn is important. Not fully knowing the connection with Saturn and the Black Cube, I was able to learn quite a bit about the importance of Saturn while researching the cube's significance. As it turns out, Saturn worship is cube worship. Here is some history as I understand it on Saturn. Since ancient times, sages gazed at the stars and admired their heavenly glow, attributing them with godly, small g, powers, based on their assumed effect on humans. Before the Great Flood, and before the days of Noah, Saturn was regarded by mankind as the supreme god and ruler of kings. Saturn ruled the kingdom of Atlantis and became the divine ancestor of all earthly patriarchs and kings. In Egyptian mythology, Isis is considered Saturn's eldest daughter. Quote, "I am Isis, queen of this country. I was instructed by Mercury. No one can destroy the laws which I have established. I am the eldest daughter of Saturn, most ancient of the gods." End quote. Semitic civilizations referred to the god Saturn as El. The supreme deity was represented by a black cube. We can find instances of this cube across the world. Many esoteric researchers affirm that the name Israel is the combination of the names of ancient pagan deities Isis, Ra, and El. The Greeks and the Romans also worshipped Saturn as a cruel deity. Quote, "With the deposing of his father, Saturn became the ruler of the universe for untold ages, and he reigned with his sister, Ops, who also became his wife. It was prophesied that one day Saturn would lose power when one of his children would depose him. To prevent this from happening, each time Ops delivered a child, Saturn would immediately swallow it. When her sixth child, Jupiter, or Zeus, was born, Ops had him spirited away to the island of Crete. She then wrapped a stone in his swaddling clothes, and her deception was complete when Saturn swallowed it, thinking it was the child. When Jupiter was grown, he secured the job of cupbearer to his father. With the help of Gaia, his grandmother, Jupiter fed his father a potion that caused him to vomit up Jupiter's 5 siblings, Vesta, Ceres, Juno, Pluto, and Neptune. And the Greek words for these names are Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon." End quote. That comes from Saturn mythology off of Wikipedia. Saturn always had a negative, if not evil, significance. In ancient times, it has been called the Greater Malefic, which was opposed to Jupiter, the Greater Benefic. Saturn is esoterically associated with man's limitations, restrictions, death, and decay. His Greek name was Kronos, the ruler of time, time being the main factor inevitably leading to the death of mortals. Traditional representations of the Grim Reaper originate from the attributes of the god Saturn, who held the sickle with which he slain his father. Saturn has also been associated with Satan for many reasons. Many authors argue that the word Satan comes from the word Saturn. Saturn is associated with the color black, as well as Satan, and ancients considered Saturn to be the furthest planet from the sun being associated with the principle of good, and note that Pluto was never considered a planet. Saturn is consequently the celestial body that is the less exposed to the sun's divine light, and thus associated with coldness and the principle of evil. Finally, the great god Pan, the horned deity, represented Saturn in ancient paganism. This half-man, half-goat creature is considered the ancestor of our modern depictions of Satan. Quote, Pan was a composite creature, a hybrid. The upper part with the exception of his horns being human, and the lower part in the form of a goat. The pipes of Pan signify the natural harmony of the spheres, and the god himself is a symbol of Saturn because this planet is enthroned in Capricorn, whose emblem is a goat. End quote. That's from Manly P. Hall, The Secret Teaching of All Ages. Pan was depicted with horns due to the fact it represented Saturn, the ruler of the house of Capricorn, which the symbol is a goat. Pan was the controlling spirit of the lower worlds. He was portrayed roaming through the forest, penis erect, drunk and lascivious, frolicking with nymphs and piping his way through the wild. We might say he ruled the lower nature of man, its animal side, not unlike Satan. Despite acknowledging its association with evil, secret societies find the veneration of Saturn necessary to obtain illumination. It is the necessary counterpart of the principle of good. Masonic authors clearly associate Saturn with Satan. Quote, Saturn is the opposite to Jupiter. His symbol is the cross above the sign of Luna. He is the Satan, the tempter, or rather the tester. His function is to chastise and tame the unruly passions in primitive men. End quote. That's J.S. Ward, who wrote Freemasonry and the Ancient Gods. Probably the most extreme example of a secret society worshipping Satan's evil principle is Fraternus Saturni, or the Brotherhood of Saturn. This occult organization is based in Germany and openly embodies the hidden side of Saturn worship. The Brotherhood of Saturn has become known to English readers through fragmentary descriptions which emphasize the sensational, sex-magical aspects of this lodge's work, or else its darker, more satanic side. This is understandable in light of the fact that the Brotherhood of Saturn is, or was, the most unabashedly Luciferian organization in the modern Western occult revival, and its practice of sexual occultism perhaps the most elaborately detailed of any such lodge. The Brotherhood of Saturn represents a unique blend of astrological cosmology, neo-Gnostic demonology, sexual occultism, and Freemasonic organizational principles. This grand synthesis was originally the vision of one man, the longtime Grand Master of the Brotherhood of Saturn, Gregor A. Gregorius. And that comes from Stephen Flowers, who wrote Fire and Ice, the History, Structure, and Rituals of Germany's Most Influential Modern Magical Order, the Brotherhood of Saturn. The cube can be found in the shape of the hexagon, and as you likely know, hex means curse. In alchemy, the Philosopher's Stone is a cube-shaped source of power. It contains legendary substance which can turn base metals such as lead to gold. In Enoch chapter 2, we read this, And after those days, in that place where I had seen all the visions of that which is hidden, where I had been carried off in a whirlwind, and they had borne me towards the west. There mine eyes saw all the secret things of heaven that shall be, a mountain of iron, and a mountain of copper, and a mountain of silver, and a mountain of gold, and a mountain of soft metal, and a mountain of lead. And I asked the angel who went with me, saying, What things are these which I have seen in secret? And all these things shall be denied and destroyed from the surface of the earth, when the elect one shall appear before the face of the Lord of spirits. The cube offers the elixir of life for rejuvenation and achieving immortality. It is the power of the future, which is eternal life through transhumanism. Ecclesiastes 1:9. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. From where does this knowledge come from, and for whom is it intended? Quote, beginning in 1959, Benjamin Krim was contacted by one of the ascended masters, who told him he had a mission to perform for the advancement of the master's plan for humanity. Krim was instructed to prepare the way for the coming of the one Lord Maitreya, a master who would assume human form and begin preparing humanity for the advent of the Age of Aquarius, a sort of New Age millennium. The Aquarian Age would be a time of peace, plenty, perfect equality, and global governance under the masters via the United Nations, end quote. This is from New Age Roots by Stephen Bonta. Krim states that his career in the occult began through a study of Wilhelm Reich's work and the use of the orgone accumulator. He became, quote, consciously aware of and extremely sensitive to energy currents, end quote. In mid-1957, he worked with a group which claimed contact with the Space Brothers and discovered his ability to transmit energy from the space people. In 1958, Krim entered into close contact and began to work for the Space Brothers. By 1974, Krim and his small group received a series of overshadowing messages by Maitreya, which launched him on his career to affirm his coming. It's revealing to note that Krim also mentions that his group would often make contact with Maitreya in ceremonies that were held on the full moon and at various times of astrological significance. Krim talks about the Aquarian Age. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, and Aquarius is the new age of man. Krim's Maitreya promises a time of peace, an age when one will come in fulfillment of all religions. In this time we will see the diminishment of the Bible and the exaltation of other religions, and recall that Krim sought to bring the secret knowledge of Maitreya to none other than the United Nations. There is only one person that can bring this kind of peace to humanity, only one that would dare to be coming in the fulfillment for all religions, and only one who would dare mock the resurrection of the Christ by dying as a man and rising again to be filled with the spirit not of life, but of death. Revelations 13:2-3. Quote, "And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast." End quote. 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Quote, "Who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." End quote. 2 Thessalonians 2:4 describes one who would want to be God and sit in his temple and try to be as God is. There is something called Hermetic alchemy, which somewhat differentiates itself from metals alchemy. It speaks again to the transformation of oneself. There are 3 phases: black, white, and red. Ultimately, when ascended, one is in the gold phase, and they are complete. It is not really so much of a phase of change, it just means they have completed their ascension. In the blackness of Negrito, as it is called, quote, "What is the first thing you encounter when you close your eyes? Blackness. When you enter your inner world, you enter into darkness. This is the first experience and the first stage of the great work. Here, the operation of putrefaction takes place. Here, the fixed gets dissolved by the volatile. By becoming aware of the volatile mind, the bodily consciousness diminishes. In alchemical symbols, Negrito is always indicated by something black: the raven, the raven's head, the dark jacket, darkness, the night, the solar or moon eclipse, the tomb, hell, and death. When the matter has entered the stage of blackness, it is called lead, or Saturn, or the head of the Moorish one. Remember that this is considered truth for them. When matter has entered the stage of blackness, it is called lead, or Saturn. Okay, back to the website's description. Whiteness, or albedo. This is the perfect putrefaction, when all blackness has disappeared and the color white appears. Then it is said that life has conquered death, that the king has been revived, that earth and water has become air, and the child has been born, that heaven, the volatile, the female, and earth, the fixed, the male, have married. It is the realm of the moon. When one has purified his awareness of self during meditation by eliminating thoughts or otherwise, then at a certain point light appears. This can be, but is not necessary, a visual light inside oneself. The light that appears is also metaphoric for an absolute, clear, pure awareness of self. It is something that cannot be described. One does not indeed experience the darkness anymore that is there when one closes the eyes. The alchemists say that in whiteness, the matter has attained a degree of fixedness that fire cannot destroy. In that state, one is in a very fixed position that is very stable, very much in the here and now, in total clarity of self. The philosophers say that when one has attained this stage, one needs to destroy the books because they become superfluous. From this point on, one needs to continue this purification of awareness to the next stage of redness. Redness, or rubedo, the third and last phase, is characterized by the color red. When the white stone or the white elixir has been made, it needs to be purified further, sublimated, until the matter becomes totally fixed and is completely stable. Then we have the red sulfur, the red stone, the red elixir, the stone of the wise. When the divine light has emerged during meditation, one needs to make it last. This demands a continued effort of holding one's attention to this pure awareness, not only for the length of the meditation session, but also during everyday life. At a certain point, the pure awareness of one's divine self will be permanent. End quote. If we want to attempt to understand all of the alchemy versus Hermetic alchemy, we must look to the relationship between astrology. Perhaps then the allegory of the transmutation of lead and lesser metals into gold may be more simply understood. The traditional correspondences between the alchemical metals and the ancient planets are as follows. Saturn is lead, the moon is silver, Mercury is quicksilver, Venus is copper, Jupiter is tin, and the sun is gold. Saturn is the planet associated in astrology with time and that rules over matter. Lead, in Hermetic alchemy, represents our physical bodies, the prima materia, or the first matter with which they begin the opus magnum, or the great work. The allegory of the transmutation of lesser metals into gold represents the transmutation of the physical body into ever more refined forms of energy and the cultivation of ever more subtle bodies and higher consciousness. The Hermetic and alchemical traditions do not view soul as something existing inherently and equally in all human beings, but rather to be actively cultivated and developed. According to the Hermetic tradition, each of us possesses only the seed of a soul. It is up to us to cultivate the seed or not. The transmutation of lead into gold refers to the cultivation of soul, the refinement of matter into even purer forms of energy, and ultimately the giving birth to a body of light or a solar body. At the moment of death, the alchemist projects his or her consciousness into their solar body, achieving liberation from further incarnation and becoming consciously immortal. This transmutation occurs using the transmutative properties of the Philosopher's Stone. In previous videos, I've talked about black goo, especially in regards to the movies The Blob, The Brain Eaters, Venom, and The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I was not at that time quite sure to make up what it could be, will be, and if it is even a real thing. I'm beginning to understand that this is very real, and now I'm understanding more why it exists, what it's intended for, and what it may mean for all of us. Liquid alchemy is the key to transhumanism, bringing in a third technological DNA strand to complement our human DNA. This DNA that is purely technological and man-made will create the hybrid and will most certainly be a clear mark of the beast. This technological DNA will be introduced to the body by choice, and it will be laid down by none other than gold. Gold being the completion for transformation. Gold is an excellent conductor, as is water. The human body consists of a large amount of water and is highly affected by electrical and vibrational energies. As the beast system arises, and as we accept this technological DNA, and as the Antichrist comes to reign, we will very likely be controlled by the airwaves and the sound waves. Recall Ephesians 2:2. Wherein in time past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. End quote. Satan is the prince of the air. There is something called programmable matter. From an article I found entitled The Promise and Peril of Programmable Matter, quote, "It's time to take matter into our own hands, to shape it to our will, to control it as easily as we control our computers and smartphones," end quote. Basically, programmable matter is exactly what it sounds like. There is a study, what is called synthetic biology, which is another fancy way to cover up their liquid alchemy by calling it microfluidics and synthetic biology. From Wikipedia, quote, "Microfluidics deals with the behavior, precise control, and manipulation of fluids that are geometrically constrained to a small, typically sub-millimeter scale at which capillary penetration governs mass transport. Advances in microfluids technology are revolutionizing molecular biology procedures for enzymatic analysis, DNA analysis, proteomics, and in chemical synthesis." End quote. We know that they've been testing nanotechnology on us for years, and while much of it has caused physical ailment, pain, emotional instability, skin manifestations, and many other things, it has not worked well for signaling and controlling. Perhaps they knew that the nanotechnology they tested on us wouldn't work in this way, but merely wanted to perfect something that they needed us as lab rats to fully see out. Or perhaps they didn't understand that the beast system does not work unless we choose it. Diseases such as syphilis, Lyme, and Morgellons are detrimental and mostly incurable, and they were given to us in secret via vaccine, weaponized ticks, crop dusting, and chemical trails. Also, even as nanobots, that technology was too big. They needed to be able to penetrate the code God wrote for us and corrupt it to their will. For this, they would need minuscule, smaller than nanotechnology, as I have mentioned. Something that could rewire our DNA forever. Microfluidics and programmable matter are the final frontier for mass population control. So, if you're still asking yourself, what is this black goo again? This matter that we call black or gray goo is programmable matter, the product of liquid alchemy, microfluidics, and synthetic biology. And if you remember, the human body is referred to as lead, as well as Saturn being lead, which is the color of black. It is my opinion that this technology comes from demonic forces, which would also explain the color black. We now know there is a process for ascension associated with these colors. First black, which is the programmable DNA matter that most will accept into their bodies. Remember when I described transmutation of demonic possession by way of trauma-based mind control, such as what I believed happened with Wendy Williams in my 2-part series, Get Out. In the trauma-based mind control, there seems to be less ability to control, and often these people have to go back in for programming. This is a better form of transmutation, as I'll describe again soon. During the white phase of Hermetic alchemy, this is where one becomes aware of self. This to me is a demonic possession, and it's similar to the trauma-based demonic possession situation. The demon will become aware of self in the body it is inhabiting. I believe this to be the same with the hybrid introduction during the white phase of the third technological DNA. During the red phase, the state of self-awareness must be fixed into a constant state of being. This would also apply to the trauma-based mind control demonic possession as well. This entity would want to have complete control and fixation over its host. Clearly, this is how it will happen with the new corrupted technological DNA. The demonic possession will be faster and easier when we willingly accept it and don't have to be fractured and altered, as it will be laid down on our DNA. Recall before, when talking about the red phase, quote, "At a certain point, the pure awareness of one's divine self will be permanent," end quote. At this point, total possession will be successful and permanent. Hybridization will be in body only. The human conscience will be entirely erased. And for this reason, I now understand why God will not allow many to see truth at end times and let them continue to be deceived. I have mentioned before, they will find a way to make people want this new DNA strand. They have to, or else it will not work. The beast in Revelations is not required, but rather pressured, because buying and selling will only be accepted to those who are marked. In order to get most to accept the mark, we are already seeing a huge push to make transhumanism sexy, innovative, and cool. Many songs, music videos, movies, commercials, you name it, are pushing the AI side as the future. They call it an upgrade. Movies and music show a future war between human and AI, manipulating us into siding with the AI for unfair and unjust treatment by evil Nazi-style humans that don't care about the AI's feelings. Music videos show singers battling their former lesser versions as the new AI version wins in the end. And then they show the upgrading of self and having virtual partners instead of real life partners. Oftentimes they show the cube that will bring enlightenment and high mentality to the masses, while the main character ascends almost always to the top of a staircase and to final completion to godly status. My simpler hypothetical scenario from a previous video was a cure and protection from cancer in the form of vaccine, and that I hardly know a single person that would not comply with this and therefore would be accepted by most. It may be more likely a promise of a cancer cure along with 100 other tantalizing promises of peace, eternal life, eternal health, clean air, and so on. But mark my words, if we are not of a sober mind and alert to what's going on, we will most assuredly accept the mark of the beast, that is this third DNA, and step into a demise we will no longer be able to be freed from. The lost are seeking immortality through Satan instead of Jesus, whether they realize it or not. The Bible does not say that good people will get into heaven even if they know Jesus and denied him. Jesus is the cornerstone, the stone for which our whole salvation is built, the stone for which our whole foundation is built. The lost worship the wrong stone. They worship the philosopher's stone, the black cube, Saturn. And many are still looking to a physical building as the third temple. But recall when Jesus said that he would tear down the temple and in 3 days build it up again? His resurrected body was the new temple, not a physical structure. Much like this, I truly believe the third temple comes in the form of the hybrid body. When we see mankind partaking on a worldwide scale with this third technological DNA strand, we will see the foundations of the third temple then, and the beast will come to build the AI army that will be the temple structure. And upon that, the reign of the Antichrist, we will see the gold Moroni statue topping it off. And I hope in this moment you hear the horn.